Welcome, everybody. We are thrilled that you are joining us today. We are excited to be the first breakout session for CCCAOE, and we are especially excited because today we are going to be profiling Antelope Valley College's Teacher Accelerated Preparation Program, which is a brand new federally funded grant that Antelope Valley has secured for the next 5 years, working on diversifying the teachers in Antelope Valley with a special emphasis on our Latino and Latina population. So welcome. We are thrilled that you are here today. We're excited to tell you about everything that's been happening and everything that's going to happen with this project. My name is Renee Marshall, and I am an education consultant. I have been serving community colleges since 2004. So for the past 17 years of my career. I also spent time in TK through 12 education, and I really love working on teacher preparation and everything involved in it. I've been focusing on teacher preparation at the community college level for the past, 14 years of my career. Anyways, we're thrilled to have you here today. And I have a couple of my colleagues I'm going to quickly introduce, and then we're going to go ahead and get into all the components of what we are going to share today with the TAPP project. First off, I'd like to introduce Kim Barker. Kim Barker is the lead of the Teacher Accelerated Preparation Program at Antelope Valley College. She is a full-time faculty member in early childhood education, and she has just accepted to the position of being the director for the TAPP project at Antelope Valley College. And we are thrilled to be collaborating with Kim. She's the lead of TAPP, and we are so excited to be working with her. So welcome, Kim. We're glad to have you here today.
Thank you.
Next, we also have Bobby Becca, and Bobby Becca is an education consultant who specializes in grant and grant budgets. She has been working in our community college system. I hope I don't misspeak here, Bobby, but for about 20 years now. Is that correct? About 20? I hope I'm right on that.
In the California system, it's been 15.
Okay, so 15 in the California system, but Bobby is like a grant guru, especially when it comes to budgeting and making sure that you are hitting all your deliverables, but also being a steward of the finances that you have been given by the feds. And so thank you, Bobby, for being here today. I'm also very happy to introduce Yadira Ariano, and Yadira is faculty in early childhood and education. She's been in our community college system for quite a few years now, and she's one of the leads of the teacher preparation programs, which is the statewide TPP group who helps to guide teacher preparation for the state of California. And Yadira has been an absolute asset to the TAPP project, and moving forward, we're excited to be working with her. So thank you, Yadira, for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And welcome to everybody who's joined us. We'd like to encourage you at any time to, if you could introduce yourself in chat, that would be wonderful. If at any time you have any questions or have any clarification, please feel free to unmute and talk with us. We're lucky that we're a smaller group today, so we want to encourage any dialogue that people would like to have. But we are thrilled that you are here today, and we are excited to share with you about the about the TAPP project at Antelope Valley College. We've included pictures of all 4 of us, and anybody who's interested, we'll be happy to share the slides with you after if you would like them. Please, if you do at any point, just put your email inside the chat box and we'll make sure we'll share it with you. And before we go and transition to Kim, I want to quickly remind you, I'm not going to read over this at all, but this was the basically the description we have for the session today that we included with CCCAOE, and it gives you a gist of what we're planning to do with the TAPP project. But instead of reading a very long paragraph on this PowerPoint, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Kim Barker, and she's going to tell us as much as possible about the Antelope Valley College TAPP program.
Thank you, Renee. I'm so excited to see all of you here today. And I have to tell you, working with these 3 women has been an incredible experience. They are adding so much to this process and truly supporting the success that we hope to have with this project. So let me tell you a little bit about TAPP, the Teacher Accelerated Preparation Program at Antelope Valley College. We're going to bring together key stakeholders in teacher preparation, and collectively we will coordinate, collaborate, and design teaching pathways and contextualize learning for the future of the teachers in Antelope Valley. Our lens will reflect a very special concentration on serving Hispanic students. And I love that because it is a true reflection of so much of our community and the needs that come forth each year at the college. This is a 5-year federally funded project. That is just exciting in itself. We have an opportunity to truly create EDU certificates and pathways that are going to best support our students, but especially Antelope Valley's Hispanic student population. The TAPP project will allow community college teachers preparations, community college teacher preparation students to hopefully seamlessly take courses at Antelope Valley College. And this includes our satellite campuses as we work to support students on their pathway, their individual pathways to the teaching workforce. So with specific strategies and many resources, many collaborative efforts within the community, Antelope Valley College and our community stakeholders are committed to diligently, passionately, and persistently supporting a grow your own model of teacher preparation within Antelope Valley Colleges, or the Antelope Valley's Hispanic population, and within the infrastructure of Antelope Valley College. So as we look at beginning this grant, we really are at the grassroots, the fundamental foundation. And we know that to truly make the much needed changes, we must begin at that foundation, community. We must engage our community in order to find the true needs of our students. If we want to support them in an individualized focus, we have to go directly to the source. That is our community, that is our students. And we have been so fortunate to take this time during the pandemic to really identify some of the gaps. The pandemic has many silver linings. When we are willing to take a strength-based approach, it truly becomes clear we have been given much insight into many important and valuable unmet needs that we are finding with our students. This has allowed us to identify some of the necessary changes that we would like to engage in, but also many of the strengths and the best practices we can continue to implement. For example, some of our students are thriving in this online synchronous forum. So let us not let that dissipate. It's all about redefining the student engagement and student success. This will allow us to redefine the definition of student engagement. What does that really look like? We as faculty have been given opportunity to insert ourselves into the private lives of our students. We now have this opportunity to know our students through a completely different lens. Our educational spaces have encouraged us to humanize our trajectory in approaches in education. We have the privilege of understanding a more humanized view of ethnographic studies. And it begins with the leaders in education. We have to truly do some introspective work. What are we willing to shift? Where are we able to shift? And what does that look like? And sometimes it's a bit of an uncomfortable process because education can oftentimes be very didactic in approach. But if we can really look at ourselves, our intrapersonal selves, and ask, what can we do to be better facilitators? What can we do to be better professors? What can we do to be better support systems? And where are we willing to shift? How far are we willing to go? In a way that stabilizes the integrity of our programs, but also supports the needs of our students. Strategies for meaningful engagement with our Latino students and community is a must. And we have to really start identifying what those special strategies are and how they will truly support our students. I'm going to hand it over to Renee to share some of the TAPP key components. Thank you, Renee.
Thank you so much, Kim. I also want to just briefly, I apologize, but when I was introducing Yadira, I forgot to mention that Yadira is actually the lead of the Los Angeles region Strong Workforce Program. And so that was something I'm sorry that I didn't mention that, Yadira, but I wanted to make sure that I shared that with everybody as well.
Thank
So
you. No worries, Renee.
she does a lot. That's one of the things that Yadira does. So
And she'll be working very closely with us at Antelope Valley College. So.
well, I think one of the smartest things that I really want to attribute to Kim Barker is she not only received this exceptional grant, but she's building a team of people that have many years of experience in this space. And so she's not starting in like a brand new, you know, trying to build it from the very scratch, you know, kind of mentality, which I think is really wonderful. And that is something that's unique. Now, I have to tell you, I ran teacher preparation at College of the Canyons for over a decade. And this TAPP program that will be rolling out at Antelope Valley College, and that is rolling out of Antelope Valley College right now, the foundational pieces of this program are basically where my program was after 10 years. And so I'm so excited because not only is this going to scale teacher preparation in Antelope Valley, but it's really taking best practices like all over and really integrating them in the program from the moment the students are engaged. So let's talk about a couple key components of this program. First off, there's going to be opportunities for students who are interested in teaching to learn about that starting in high school. And not only will they be learning about it in high school, but they will be able to start a pathway to becoming an educator while they're in high school. And that will be a combination of dual enrollment classes and other coursework to make sure that they are getting what they need to give them the, you know, the test drive of, is this the right field for you? But to also have them start getting some units while they're in high school right now. I know this because not only did I help to create the education pathway in my community, and I live in the sister community of Santa Clarita Valley, but I also have one of my own children on the education pathway right now. And so it's fascinating to be on the side of, you know, I've served as the director and the administrator on that side, but I'm also coming in from the parent side right now. And so Antelope Valley is going to have options like our students haven't seen before. We're going to have the chance to start contextualized experiences right from the get-go with young people who already are showing an interest in the field of education. And we're going to also be looking at what does that look like in the virtual space, because right now many of our TK through 12 classrooms are not taking any volunteers and not having people face to face. So we have to be looking at what this looks like in a virtual space and in that face to face. And this grant will do that. In addition to working with our high school students who are interested in becoming teachers, we're going to have a huge emphasis on, excuse me, outreach. The outreach is going to be to all of our sister high schools. One of the things that we found in other regions when we're doing outreach to our high school students, we found it to be incredibly beneficial to include parents, if at all possible, in information sessions, because what we have found is that many parents are looking to go into a different industry and to get some additional skills and maybe change careers. And we found that education is a prime spot for that to happen. We've also had the opportunity through working with other communities in dual enrollment. We've had meetings where we've met with students, and then all of a sudden we talk to a parent who's at the meeting as well. The parent ends up taking classes, and then they end up getting on the pathway to education. So this really is meant to be an inclusive pathway where we're doing outreach to our high school students, to our community, and also to our college students, of course. We also really want to be looking at, when we're doing outreach in the community, we want to get into the grit of the community. We want to get in the schools. We want to get in the churches. We want to get in the community-based organizations. We want everyone in Antelope Valley to know that if you're thinking about anything related to being a teacher, Antelope Valley College is the premier place to go. And so, and this is already something that has been worked on for years, so I don't mean to imply that this is new. Many of you who are on right now are leaders in this area. And so it's just taking what's good, making it better, and then at the very foundational level, and this is what it comes down to, we need to get more Hispanic teachers in Antelope Valley. What we've got right now is not a match. In just a minute, I'm going to talk about a little bit of data so that way we have that background on it. But at this key level, we're trying to create a program that from the point somebody shows any interest in teaching, they're going to have a very specific pathway that's going to have support services, wraparound services from the moment they step on the pathway to the moment they're in the profession. We're going to have free test preparation for all of those students who are interested. So, and that can be there's some boundaries and some barriers in teacher preparation. Like you have to take the CBEST and you have to take the CSET, and there's a series of tests that you need to take. They're expensive and time consuming, but we have experts in teacher preparation who help and meet with our students to break it down. So that way we can get them on the road sooner and get through those barriers as fast as possible. And I'm excited to say those test prep workshops, we're already going to start those in fall, in spring, in this spring. And so we've already got some key components of TAPP that are going to start rolling out with our students right away this semester. Even though we're doing a lot of planning right now, we want to make sure that we start, you know, getting those deliverables and getting those opportunities for students and getting the word out about the TAPP program at Antelope Valley and everything it has to offer. Now, another thing too that is essential, a huge piece of the foundation of this grant is really about equity. And we're looking at having an equity-minded response in all we do. We're looking at having really hard conversations whenever necessary to make sure that we break through the walls and the barriers that our students have. And so fortunately, we have other teacher preparation colleges throughout the state that have been working on the Grow Your Own model for quite a few years, where they're taking people in their community who may not have considered teaching and giving them the information and the skills to see if that is a career pathway that they would consider. And so we're really basing this off of some really, really best practices. Another couple components of TAPP that are going to be exciting is we've got a summer bridge program. We've got a first year experience program. We've got it embedded that we have both internal and external stakeholders. For instance, our students who are in TAPP, they will absolutely be involved in the writing center on campus. We're going to get them involved in supplemental instruction workshops, and we're basically crafting a program that's going to have all these components throughout to provide the support needed, both virtually and face-to-face. Face-to-face for our teacher preparation students. Another few key components that I'd like to share with you have to do with professional development. And professional development in this grant, it looks at it from a couple different perspectives. So we absolutely want to make sure that our future teachers and our future educators are getting professional development opportunities throughout all that they do. And one of the things that's great is Antelope Valley College is strategic in who they work with. And so, for instance, the Los Angeles region is going to be hosting a huge student conference in May. So since we already know our sister colleges are hosting this, we're going to market that exact event to our students at Antelope Valley as well. It's an inclusive conference. It's meant for anybody who's interested in the field. So instead of, while we're in the planning phases here, instead of trying to roll out a huge conference in 2 months, we're going to rely on our sisters colleges in order to do that. And we're going to work strategically. Now, in terms of professional development, though, we're also looking at how do we offer professional development for faculty and also for administrators. So anybody who's interested in professional development, TAPP will be a hub to go to. And an example of something that's really exciting is Antelope Valley College is going to be taking the lead on a statewide conference this August that is about bringing education systems together. And it is a full conference that totally focuses on on professional development for faculty and administrators in relationship to teacher preparation, in relationship to the different systems that we work with. So it's a conference that not only Antelope Valley is putting together for August, but Antelope Valley will be calling on leaders from our community college system, from our CSU and UC system, and also from our TK through 12 system. And it's going to be a way that we bring professional development to the forefront for all of us. So instead of being in these silos of doing it individually, we're really committing to have this big statewide professional development extravaganza coming up in August. And we hope that you will take part in that. Hopefully some of you who are on right now will be some of our presenters as well. Yay, wonderful. I agree, Diane. It's such a wonderful conference. So I'm excited that AV is going to be taking the lead on this. I could go on and on. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Khadira.
No, I was quickly going to mention to everybody, you mentioned the LA Regional Conference, and I just want to let everybody know this is the work that we do. We all collaborate together. So all of the sister colleges really come together. And if you have students that might want to attend, please just let us know. We don't mind it. Even if you're not in the LA region, we will still have your students come over, join the conference. It's via online, it's free. And they do get a lot of benefits. We have a lot of people presenting and universities.
Well, and I love that you, Dara, brought this up too. One of the challenges that we have been working on now since the pandemic began was how do we flip fieldwork and practicum into a virtual space? And so one of the things that we did with our conferences last fall was last fall and last spring,
Right.
within the conference, we listed every single breakout session that had a credentialed teacher who was on the
Yes.
panel. And then all the EDU faculty across the state pretty much agreed that
Yep.
we would allow those sessions to kind of count towards fieldwork as we were looking for alternative ways to provide fieldwork for students. So one of the cool things about this is it's a different version of field work, but it's going to get them networking and it's going to get them on topics that are happening right this minute. And so it's a different way of doing it. But I'll tell you, like Kim mentioned earlier, there's been a lot of silver linings when it comes to the pandemic. And one of the silver linings was when we did the LA Region Conference in fall of 2019, we had 350 students attend. We were thrilled. 350 for a conference? Like, everybody who's on the line right now knows that's success, right? So
Right.
fast forward to having this in the virtual space, whoops. And sorry, I'm going to get to this slide in just a second, but fast forward to this in the virtual space, we run the same conference or a similar conference during the pandemic. For the LA region, we had over 1,500 people attend the conference. And we also ran a Bay Area conference. And that conference, instead of having 200 to 300 people, had 2,100 people attend. So the virtual space has given us kind of a reach that we haven't had in the past, which is really exciting. So I want to share this slide with everybody. And hopefully everybody who's on right now is somebody who is a data happy person. I think we probably all are. And actually, I just got a message in the chat before I go to data. I'm going to bump it back to Kim for just a second because Kim's going to say something about the conference we were just talking about, the statewide conference in August.
Yes, I wanted to let you know that we are so interested in hearing from you. What are some of the needs that you're seeing as faculty and administrators? So we would love your input because we would like to be able to provide those services for you and support you in an assessment of your needs and bringing to light some of the information that you are finding you're seeing gaps and need support in. So we would love to hear from you as we move forward and start planning that August conference.
One of the
Thanks.
things that we've tried to do so much during the pandemic is to be responsive towards faculty needs. And so I really appreciate that Kim just said that because that's something that we're trying to do almost instantaneous. And I'll give an example, like, please share any gaps you have. We want to share those with us. An example is last month we were in a meeting and early childhood faculty across the state were talking about the equity issues that Zoom bring. And somebody said, wow, we just need to be able to teach our students how to do a Zoom background, how to do an avatar. And somebody like listed off all these things. And for most of us, we were kind of like, we don't even know how to do that. How do we teach a student? And so what ended up happening is we instantly realized we needed a Zoom training. And what's happening tomorrow? A statewide Zoom training for all early childhood faculty across the state. So literally the training on the topic is coming out less than a month after it was asked by faculty. And that level of responsiveness, we wouldn't have had that usually during pre-pandemic. So it's so exciting that we're being action oriented. So any gaps you see, any opportunities, please share them throughout this presentation. We will absolutely make sure that they are included in both the LA Region Conference in spring and the statewide conference in that Antelope Valley will be leading in August. So with that, I want to talk data for a minute here. Now, the baseline of this entire funding, this entire project, has to do with diversifying Antelope Valley's teachers specifically in relation to Latino and Latina and or Hispanic, depending on how you classify. And Yadira is going to talk about that a little bit later. But basically looking at how do we increase the number of teachers that are Latino and Latina to match our number of students. And this data, though they're taken from 2 different years, we weren't able to get the same exact data snapshot from these 2 sides here, but we think it's fascinating that you look at overall in California, we have almost 3.8 million Latino and Latina students in our education systems. And then you look over here to the left, and you look at the total number of teachers, and in total, we've got, so we've got 3.4 million Hispanic students, which is more than 50% of our overall students throughout the state of California. Then we look at teachers. We've got 307,000 teachers, right? And we've got 64,000 that are Latino and Latina. So we have over 50% of our students Latino and Latina, and we have 20% of our teachers Latino and Latina. So the balance is off. What we're trying to do is we want students to be able to walk into a classroom and see education leaders that look like them. We're talking specifically about Latino and Latina in this project, but when we look at African American students, there are some African American students that go their entire TK through 12 career and engage with one Black teacher or 0 Black teachers their entire time they're in our system. Honestly, it should be like criminal. I mean, and not that it would be, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just not fair. It's not right. When we're looking at best practices, that's not a best practice. So when we're talking about teacher diversification, we're talking about growing our own teachers in Antelope Valley, intentionally reaching out to the Hispanic population, in addition to everybody, but targeting the Hispanic population and trying to provide as many wraparound services and resources as possible in order to make sure that they will be successful on the pathway of education. Now, we often talk about education as if it's teaching and that's it. We want to just kind of open that up. When we're talking about teacher preparation, we have many students that engage in our programs that are looking at being a counselor, looking at being any sort of like support not materials, but support staff. So maybe they're interested in occupational therapy or speech pathology or anything related to the education system. TAPP is here to provide support, provide resources, and to provide hope for their future. When you've got mentors and you have faculty mentors and peer mentors and you've got all these opportunities, it really is setting students up for success. And that is what we are trying to do here. With that, we are going to move on now to some of my colleagues are going to take it over. So Kim, I'm going to mute and it is all you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Renee. Wow, what Renee is just so incredible with her knowledge on programs like this. And we are so fortunate to have hired her into this grant and program. And it's such a pleasure. I just love sitting and listening to you. Introspection, based on everything that Renee is talking about, we really have to take introspection into consideration, especially when we're looking at these students that we're wanting to support and serve. And as Renee mentioned, we really have to provide an environment for them that is representative of them. We also need to provide an environment that says, hey, you have a passion and your passion's going to change as you grow. And that's okay. You may come in thinking you're going to be a K-12 teacher. And as you engage in the process, you might find some other interests. But what we want to let them know, and the way that we want to support them, is by saying, you don't have to start from the bottom up again. Let's look at where your passion is changing and see how it fits in to this education and this fundamental foundation that you've already built. So as we move forward in really supporting and getting to know our students, we got to have the deep conversations. We've got to have the conversations that are uncomfortable and are not part of our everyday experience. And we've got to have them honestly, and we've got to have them in a supportive environment and a supportive space. And one of the most important questions that we can ask for this grant, when you hear the word Latina or Latino, what comes to your mind? How do you define that? So we'd like you to take a few minutes and really think about that. Maybe write down your answer, throw it into chat, and let's have a little bit of a discussion about this. Take a few minutes, think about that.
I would go even far, Kim, is to say if they wanted to share out, you're welcome to share out as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Yadira.
I'm going to go ahead and start us off with a quick share out. I have really great connotations when it comes to Latinos and Latinas. I had the opportunity to go to a high school that was 50% Latino and 50% white. And so for most of my 4 years of high school, I like, this is gonna, I don't mean to like glamour, I don't mean this to sound weird, but like I always wanted to be Latino and Latina because so many of my dear friends were, and I saw so much, like, to me, I think of like wonderfulness of family. Like I remember like I'd go to my friends who were, Mexican, I'd go to their house and like the family was always like greet me and hug me. And I always felt part of the culture where some cultures don't allow you to be an insider outsider. And I always felt like with the Latino culture, um, like there was just warmth and there was kind of like acceptance. And so I just always felt really supported and and just really good. I don't know. So those are my connotations, but I think it was based on, having that high school experience of 50-50. So, a chunk of my friends, we were all together in it and it was like half of them, half of us, but we were all together. So it worked out.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you so much. Anybody else?
Would anybody like to share out? I'll share with you. I grew up in the Midwest, and the environment that I was in was very white. And so as I was growing up, hearing Latino, Latina, Hispanic, um, my first thought was immigrant.
Yeah.
Always immigrant. And it hasn't been until my adult life and I've been able to insert myself in different environments and truly begin to understand the beauty of the diversity of our country um, and how we support that. I was an assistant director for Family Literacy Program, and we serve Latino families, and it was 10 years, 10 of the best years of my life. I have to agree, Renee, the family dynamic, the love, the support that comes from the culture and upbringings is beautiful and so all-encompassing, so inclusive. And that has been my experience, but it didn't start out that way. And now I see it as, now I identify it as part of the beauty in the diversity of our country. And I want to listen to understand. I want to research to understand. I want to support to understand. I want to engage and create relationships to understand and become part of, and just grow my appreciation for. So.
Thank you, Kim. And I want to just quickly share out. I enjoy hearing everybody share out on what Latina or Latino means. And I don't want to say anything before. Does anybody else have anything else to say?
Yes, hi, this is Pedro Mendez. I'm from
Hi.
Modesto Junior College. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. We're engaging in teacher preparation initiative in our region. So I'm gathering information for a portion of our teams. So great resource, great initial conversation. I think when I think about Latino and Latina, and just that general conversation, it sometimes is regional based in terms of the cultural populations that are there. It's generation based.
Mhm.
So the large classification, if you will, makes it difficult to unpack the diversity of what we mean in Latino and Latinas. And I began to appreciate this a little bit more, particularly the generations. When I participated in some of our Hispanic education conferences at the college, and I did a conversation on policy impact, understanding of your own roots. And what was really quickly came to light was the multitude of generations that we had showing up in the classrooms, and everything from arriving immigrants to fifth, sixth generation Latina students. And there's a very stark difference in terms of their family, social connection, how they engage in community. And so that was something that to me was kind of brought light to that diversity, and something that is important when we talk about these particular issues, because the issues are quite distinct as you move through the generations.
Wow, Pedro. Why don't we just, that's exactly, and thank you so much for sharing out. And I'm just gonna share very quickly, Kim, on, thank you so much for touching on the aspects of generation, the complexity of being Latino or Latina, and everything that encompasses to be a Hispanic student. You know, as I talk to you when I get into my section, but I think it's important that when we think about this, that we understand the complexity of what it is. And a lot of times we don't understand that just because it's a word Latina or Latino doesn't mean all of our students are going to fit that category. So there's so much complexity. Pedro, thank you so much for bringing up generation and social interactions, because that's exactly what it is. Our students engage, and the way that they engage with us and the way that they engage with their community really is rooted from their culture, from what they know, from what they learned, and where they come from. And I don't think that, I think, and it's not that we don't want to, but I think that as in, you know, in the education system, sometimes we overlook at that. And we have expectations and we want our students to feel a certain way. And I'm going to share out that when I'm a Mexican, I'm Mexican, but when I used to hear the word Latina and Latino, I'm going to be honest with you, to me, that was, I viewed it, and me as a student, I viewed it as there's something wrong. There's something wrong with me. Or I saw it more like a burden, more like, oh God, like, what are they going to say now? Like, I saw it like, I'm going to label you because you're a special population, you're a special group. You're either going to need extra X amount of resources or extra amount of work. And that's how I saw it, because that was how I was raised in the education system. That's how I was made to feel. And so that's how I see Latina and how I saw it in the beginning. And I don't think it was until I got into, or I guess I would say it, I didn't really understand the complexity of it until I got into college, and I understood that I was poor and that I was the minority. And that's when I started to open up and realize, wow, this is what being Latino means. So thank you so much, Pedro, for kind of hinting in that direction. Anybody else?
I just wanted to say that one of the things I've talked about with my colleagues here before is that I think sometimes we just need to keep in mind that any sort of label we use, like Latina, Latino, Latinx, whatever we're using, keep in mind that people feel like they're losing their identity. I've mentioned to my colleagues before that I don't like being called white. I'm pretty pale, but I'm not actually white. I don't like black. People aren't black. You know, they're not this monochromatic thing. They are individuals. They identify with different parts of their culture or history. I'm Irish and Czech. I'm not white, you know, and I presume I'm not Hispanic or Latina, but I presume it's the same way. I mean, I know that Mexicans like Yadira identify as being from Mexico, not some nebulous, you know, Latina place that doesn't exist. I mean, Latin America, yes, but it's sort of it's not just one place, it's a bunch of individual countries. And so we just need to keep in mind that people don't necessarily like to lose their identity in some label that we slap on them.
I think
Um,
part of it also goes to allowing people to identify themselves. And I
yes,
really appreciate what Diane said in the chat, because I felt like our wording on this was not right. And so we put, how would you define it? And I love that Diane put, how would you define those of Hispanic/Latino heritage or who identify that way? I think personal identification is a part of it, absolutely. And honoring students how they identify we're so used to what box did they check. And I think this goes back to now the next kind of wave of education, which is individualizing education. So
yes,
I'm going to know every single one of my students, and I'm not just going to group them like, oh well, they're part of Latinx. I'm going to
right,
know Yadira, and I'm going to know what she classifies herself as, and I'm going to respect that and remember that, and make sure that in my discussions that it's inclusive. We're being inclusive the way we approach it. So, and I also want to mention, I love that Pedro mentioned about the intergenerational changes as well,
yes,
because one of the things I'm
yes,
working with high school students right now, wow, we've got a dynamic group of high school students that want to change the world, and they are socially justice minded, and they're in this whole different, they're in a place where I feel like I was at once I was empowered through college and in my early 20s, but they're there at 16.
mhm,
And so I think the potential we have right now with this next generation, we can absolutely change education. We can absolutely reimagine what this education experience is going to be like. And we can absolutely shape and change teacher preparation for Antelope Valley, and specifically our students and who identify as Latino, Hispanic, Mexican, as long as they're in the classification where the funding allows us to be reporting on them, right? And I
right.
think it's really about that individualization. And what Yadira is going to talk about is like unpackaging your personal identity and what that looks like.
Can I add to that? I'd love to offer onto that, Renee. It really goes back to, again, the willingness to have the difficult conversations to change the norms, so that conversations like this, or asking, what do you identify as, really getting to know our students. And again, we have this opportunity at hand right now. We have been invited into their lives, and we really need to take this opportunity to start shifting the norms. And we stop focusing so much on the labeling and more on who you are as an individual. Who are you, and what do you identify with? I don't want to label you. I want to know you.
I put in the
Thank
chat
you.
too, who you are and what you need.
Right.
That's what that individualized approach is going to be. And for anybody who's familiar with special education, we've got individualized education plans, right? We've got our college students doing education plans. Guess what? Education plans
Right.
individualizing. That's the key, or one of the
Thank
keys.
Thank you. And those are they're very valid. And I want to, which brings me right into my discussion. Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing. And Kim, thank you so much for posting this question. And I love that you brought that up, because that is a difficult conversation. And I think that we don't allow ourselves to have these conversations because they are difficult. And I am guilty of that. I want to say that. I want to put it out first. I am a very I'm very good at wanting everybody to do good things, and then when the pointer comes back to me, I'm like, I don't want to talk about that. But I thank you for bringing that up, Kim. It was needed, and we needed to talk about it. Yes. So if Renee, if you would change the slide, thank you so much. Here, I need to close my chat, everybody. So this brings me up to our slide, in which is, building community with your students and knowing your students. And I want to talk about that. As I mentioned to you before, I work at various colleges. I work at Rio Hondo College, at El Camino College. I am a product of East LA College. I started my career there, and East LA College is a prominent Hispanic institution. The majority of our students there are Hispanic. And I am from a single mother immigrant. I was a AB 540 student. To be honest, and I don't want you to count my years, but when I went to college, there was no such thing as AB 540. I was, as a non-resident student, I would pay my classes. So it took me 6 years to get my associate's degree, because I had to take one class at the time. And at the time, the units, you're gonna laugh, was $6 a unit. I mean, but do not count the do not count the years. It was $6 a unit, and I want to say maybe it was like $45 or $46 a class. That was a lot of money for me, because I'm going to tell you that I come from a single mother, and I was an undocumented student, and I couldn't work at a McDonald's because I didn't have a social security. So I had to work under the table. I worked at a swap meet. I don't know if you guys know what a swap meet is, but it's an open door swap meet. And I used to work from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and I used to get paid $40. But you know what? It gave me so much accomplishment when I would go and pay for my class, that I paid it out of my pocket. So that's kind of like where I come from, right? I'm an undocumented student, immigrant. In my culture, my mother was very much, you got to help me, hurry up and graduate high school, because I need you to help me with the housework and, contribute to helping me, because we need to survive. And so I always stuck in my head, like, this is not the way I want to live. There has to be another way. I have to get an education, because I refuse to live like my mom. She worked 3 jobs. And so I had to raise my brothers and sisters, but I always knew, and I always loved education. And what I decided to do is I decided to go to college. I finished my college education, got my master's, and I wanted to make sure that I was a change for my students, so that they can see me and they can see that if I made it, they can make it too. Okay, because if I'm here and I'm standing here, they also have the right. And so this brings me back to how do we identify our students? And like Pedro mentioned, there's generations. I have students in my classroom who are Mexican like me, but guess what? They rather identify themselves as Chicano, American, Mexican. And that's okay with me. There's some students who tell me, no, miss, call me, I'm Hispanic. Wonderful. I have students who are from Puerto Rico and who tell me, miss, I describe myself as an Afro-Latino student. Wonderful. She's Latina, but she's also African-American, right? And so these are the things. And when I hear my students come back to me and say, well, no, miss, I identify myself like Sonia, I'm going to talk to you about my student. She is Puerto Rican, Cuban, and African-American descent. So how do you box that? How do we put a label to that? There's no such thing. And so when we think about that and we're thinking about knowing our students, we have to allow them to identify themselves so that they can feel that power, that they have the right to move forward, and that they'll go wherever they need to go, and they'll seek the resources that they need. Another thing that we wanted to do with this project is knowing your community. It's so important to know your community and the community that you work. For example, if I am, a Hispanic teacher and I'm working at Inglewood at El Camino, I'm going to put an example. I needed to know what community I'm serving. At El Camino, we service a lot of different cities, but the majority of my students are African-American, and they are also Latino because they're from Puerto Rico, they're from Cuba, they're from Colombia. We do have a lot of Hispanic students, which are Mexican, but the majority of them come from this mixed cultures of all communities. And so I need to know what community I'm serving. I need to know where everybody's at so that I can better prepare and I can better know what it is that my students are facing. When we know that, and when we know the students that we're serving, we're able to understand them in a way that they can open up to us. For example, I work with a lot of very low income community high schools. One of the high schools that I work with, they have a lot of foster children and they have a lot of students in need. Now, with that in mind, I know I need to know that, and I need to be okay with that, so that when I teach the class or when I'm teaching the class, I know that they're going to go through struggles. I know that they're going to have a hard time logging in. I know that they're not going to have the resources that they need. So I need to be prepared and I need to work around that. And then this brings me back to meeting your students where they are, right? How can we meet the student where they are? How can we help the student so that this education system that we geared, like Renee mentioned it, we have IEPs, and what's happening right now and the success that we're having, we need to individualize education for our students. What are the needs that they need? How do we meet them so that they become successful, right? A lot of the times, and I think majority of the times what's happening is we have this mentality of, I am the professor, I know better than you, and I know that I'm doing right, so you have to do what I say. And that's where the problem is. The minute that the students begin to feel that you have a hierarchy in the class, they will shut down or they will stay back, and they won't talk because they're embarrassed. They won't talk because they feel because they feel like they can't ask you that. So we need to move away from that. How do we make the education system work for our students so that we make them successful? Next slide, Renee. Thank you so much. So this brings me, so just give you in a nutshell, that's what we do. And how I started in education was really my passion. I love seeing students because it's a reflection of me. Every time I see a student in my classroom that comes with the same eagerness and I know that they're struggling, it empowers me because I see them and I see myself years back. And I wish I had a program like this. I wish I had somebody, a mentor that I can cling to and I can say, hey, I'm sorry that I didn't submit my work to you. I was working till 8 p.m. My brothers and sisters were home. My mom didn't get home. And so I didn't get to do my homework till 11, but I was so tired, I didn't do it. So these are the things that I see and I know that they're going through. So I'm able to step back into Yadira when she was, in college and realize all the struggles they're facing, realize that culture is playing a big role, realize that they're going through a lot of things right now, and realize that not everything is in their favor. So I'm able to work with them. And one of the things that, because I have this passion and because that's how I work with my students, I was able to bring this over into dual enrollment. Okay. And let me tell you why dual enrollment. When I started my career, this is my 9th year, I believe. But when I started teaching, I started my career in the dual enrollment area. Now, if you all know dual enrollment, you all know that it's ever changing and it hasn't stopped changing since it started. Okay. When I started teaching dual enrollment and I was basically thrown into the sea. It was either a swim or sink situation. Yes, Diane. And so what I ended up doing is I remember going into a high school and I was in a high school where I got locked out. The gate was closed. The janitor had left. My car was inside the parking lot. I couldn't get out of the parking lot. I didn't have the principal's number. I didn't have the janitor's number. I called my campus police and my campus police looked at me like, where are you at the campus or where are you? And I was like, no, I'm over here at the high school. And they're looking at me like, well, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. So these were the situations that I faced. I also got locked out in the restroom. They locked the restroom for me. I didn't have anywhere to go to the restroom. I had to conduct class outside in the patio at one point because the classroom that I was supposed to go to, they didn't leave it open and the janitor was gone. So I had 25 students from the high school. I had them with me waiting for me to open the classroom. And so I thought to myself, I can wait here for another 20 minutes and the class is going to be over, or I'm just going to conduct class right here in the patio. And so these are the things that I took and I started to realize, like, how can we make this successful? Because you will get your students engaged at the high school level. We have a lot of students who are passionate, just like Renee mentioned. We have 16-year-olds who know they want to change the world, who know they want to go into teaching. And it's just a needed help or a program like this so that they can help them and we can help them identify them and help them gear towards a teaching education. With dual enrollment, it's important that we start at the high school level, that we know the community, that we include the parents as well. We want to have the parent buy-in, and let me tell you why. A dual enrollment program will not be successful if we do not have parent buy-in. And I do understand and I do know that because of FERPA and because of the regulations that we have, the parents shouldn't be involved. But I'm going to tell you right now, students who are at a high school level still need the support of the parent. So we have to find a way to work around that so that we can have the buy-in of the parents. Now, I don't know if any of you knew, but there is a form that you sign as a parent that will give you the right to ask questions about your student, about the grades, and anything that he needs. So you're basically signing a waiver saying you want to acknowledge that FERPA is a regulation, but that your son or your daughter have to sign it too, or the dual enrollment student, so that they can give the parent information. I know. Go ahead.
That's one of the things that is. I love that Yadira is bringing this up because as a parent of a child who's on a dual enrollment pathway, my 2 kids are both doing dual enrollment. They're at a dual enrollment high school. They started dual enrollment at 13 years old.
Yeah.
I was told I have no parent rights for my 13-year-olds. So since I've been in the system, I wrote the college and said, hey, what's the waiver, you guys? In case at any point I need to communicate with a faculty member, as a parent, I want to have that right. Interestingly enough, it took the college a couple weeks in order to access and they said they had discussions, and then they were able to send me the waiver. Now, we haven't sent the form in to any of my kids' dual enrollment teachers yet, but I have it. So that way, if at any point I need to communicate with them, this one piece of paper that my kids sign will allow me to communicate with them. Now, Yadira, I love that she's talking about parent engagement, because within dual enrollment, which was originally intended for 11th and 12th graders who are older than 13 and 14, it makes sense with FERPA. But when you have young children who are legally not adults yet, and the families sign off all their rights and we're not telling them they're signing off rights, there's an issue. So Yadira, I'm sorry that I just kind of come in here,
No,
but
you're
talking about parents goes against what our system says we should do. But just because it's what our system says we should do, that doesn't mean it's right. And it doesn't mean we shouldn't fight to change it. When we were looking at 17 and 18-year-old high school students, a lot of the rules make sense. The doors open up to 13, 14, 15, and 16-year-old. It's just a different ball game. So Yadira, please share what you do with parents, because it's totally unique. And I'm going to be honest, as a parent who's in dual enrollment, I wish my kids were in your program, because I wish that we had more than an orientation before they started high school, but an ongoing opportunity to ask questions and kind of, so if you could share how you structure that in a way where you're respecting student rights and following the rules, but also bending it in order to better meet student needs, I think it'd be so fantastic.
no. Thank you, Renee. And I want to apologize to everybody. I'm beginning to see, I don't know if you can hear me. My internet keeps telling me that it's unstable. We're good. Okay. So one of the things that I wanted to bring up and why it's become so successful. And again, it's not that it's successful because I'm an expert. I am not an expert. I want to let you know that I will be the first one to tell you that I made a lot of mistakes. We learn from our mistakes. I'm a big believer that we need to make mistakes so that we can perfect it. And so with this going on, I wanted to let you know, so why did it become so successful? I started to pinpoint and realize a lot of the things that were happening. And what I ended up doing is I made sure that when I was gonna teach a class for dual enrollment, I started to put my foot down. And so I would tell my administrator, if we're gonna do this class, I wanna meet the parents. Let's do a parent orientation. Oh, but it's a lot of time and maybe the parents only speak Spanish. And like I told them, it's okay, I speak Spanish. I will do it in Spanish for them. So I started doing the parent orientations and I started at East LA College. And what I would do is I would go to the high school. We would let them know, your son or daughter wants to sign up for a dual enrollment class. The professor will be here and do a parent orientation on what the class is going to be, the expectations. And at the same time, we would have a student orientation. So I had both the parent and the student there, so I can communicate and let the parent know the importance of this dual enrollment class, the importance of their child or daughter taking this class, especially those parents who were afraid of their child taking a class because the student was a DACA student, was an undocumented student. A lot of the parents, I saw my mother in those parents. I saw the fear in their eyes. And so I was there to make sure that they felt comforted, that no, this has nothing to do with immigration. This has nothing to do with your legal status. This has to do with your son's or daughter's education. A lot of the times we have to understand that it's fear that governs these type of like our culture because of what has been happening, immigration. And so I would make these parent orientations and I would have, you will not believe it, parents waiting for me to ask me questions. How is it going to work? And when that happened, I kid you not, my students were in my class every single Tuesday and Thursday at 5 p.m. punctual, because the parents knew that they had to be there at 5. And so if they were slacking off, the mother, because if you're Hispanic and you're Mexican like me and my mother made sure that if they told her she has to be there, my mother will drag me and I would tell her, oh, I don't feel like going today. Oh, it doesn't matter if you don't feel like going today. You made a commitment and you're going to show up. That's the parent buy-in, right? Your students are going to be there because they know that the culture, you met the parent, you met the mother, you told them the importance of the class. And then the student, when you're doing a presentation and they see the instructor and they see the professor and they see that they're reflected back to them because I'm Latina, I'm Mexican, I had a whole buy-in. The students always wanted to take the class. So this is one of the reasons why I do feel that the dual enrollment programs that I've worked with are successful. It's the relationship building and making sure that the students can see me reflected in them. So when they see that, the students feel more comfortable, right? And they start opening up and they start wanting to do things. And then guess what? They start taking the next class and the next class. With this brings me, and I'm sorry, I'm not following the chat. I don't know if anybody has asked me anything. Just let me know. We're good. Okay. This brings me to my next slide. This is something that I'm really, really proud of. It's not perfect. It's from El Camino College. This is my education pathway, and it is not mine. It is the college's. I say it's mine because I fostered these children and I foster these students. And I have a lot of students that went through my pathway. So I call it mine. It's not mine, but it's mine because I taught it. And it's mine because I took the effort and I took, when I teach a class and I teach my students, I teach with all my passion. So I teach them because I know they're me back when I was an 11th grader or a 10th grader. And so what we've done and that what I hope to do with Antelope Valley College is to be able to create a pathway like this. So right now we are at our is this our third year, Bobby? Third year? Third year. So this is our third year of a cohort. Last semester we started off with a total of 32 students, but we had 25 complete the pathway. This year, yes, this year was our second. This is the first year we have our pathway students now at El Camino College as college students. We started off with the 11th grade and we started them off with a child introduction to child development class. So the whole purpose was to start the students off to gear them towards a skill certificate at the campus. And once they got their skill certificate, it was going to incentivize them and give them a sense of achievement so that they feel like they did something and they were going to continue. And it's worked. We start with the introduction to child development. It goes all the way till they finish the whole, I think it's 24 units of child development. They apply for a state permit, teaching permit, and then they decide if they want to go into teaching, they're going to continue their pathway into the college level. I'm trying to tell it to you in a little nutshell because it is long. It can work for your college. It can work for any college. What we started to look at is we looked at our certificates of achievement. We paired them with the state licensing requirements for the state permits. So we did it so that they can align. So that by the time that they completed 6 units in early childhood education, our students are eligible to apply for an assistant teaching permit. Okay, now what does this do? It insensitizes the student. When the student has in their hand the ability and know like, wow, I'm state licensed by the state to be able to assist a preschool classroom, that it's phenomenal. The student feels like $1 million and it helps them keep going. I feel like I'm going in and out. Is my internet good? Okay, wonderful. And so that's what we did at El Camino College, along with changing up the classes. Now we work with a variety of high schools. What I do and how we do the recruitment is I will go with a career specialist. I don't do this on my own. Okay, I want you to know I have a team and I absolutely love my team. I have a career pathway specialist that I work with. I work with the dual enrollment director, and then I work with the dean, and we work together. So they'll let me know, my dean will let me know, okay, Yadira, do you want to teach the dual enrollment classes for 103 and 104 this coming fall? I say yes, but with that yes, I know that I need to do on my end parent orientations, student orientations, and that's just going to be part of my discipline, because if I want this class to be successful, that's the work that I need to put in as an instructor. And I'm going to leave you with just what I do feel that needs to change is we need to, as professors, take that hat off of I'm professor, I know better, things are going to be done my way, because that's what's keeping our students behind. You know, when we meet them in the middle, when we meet our students and we meet their needs, we're able to have a very rich environment for them and they're open to learning from us. And I think really that's what has worked with me. I'm willing to put in the work, and I'm willing to admit when there's something not working on my end, then there's something that I need to change, or I need to, you know, do something different. And change is important, but I think that that's what's happening is we're so stuck on this belief that, you know, we know better because we're the instructors and we're the professors. Yes, we know better. Yes, I agree with you. We went to school for that. I completely commend you. I am with you. But if we're going to want our students to successfully go through our pathway and reach higher potential, we need to be able to meet them where they're at. And I think that brings me to my next slide. Why is the dual enrollment so successful and why is the pathway so successful? And I'm going to tell you right now, you need to buddy up with one of your counselors and you need to put them in your pocket. And oh my God, you need to, counselors are such an important role in any pathway, whether it's a CTE pathway, with whatever pathway, we need to learn how to work with them because they have the knowledge of what classes they need, you know, what are the requirements that they're going to need to transfer, all of these things that we have no knowledge of. Yeah, we might have the knowledge because we went through it, but it's not the same. But having the counselor buy in with you, it's going to get you places. It's going to get your program wherever you want it to go. I highly recommend that we have students become familiar with the counselors. One of the things that I like to do with my students, and this came actually from Renee. Renee was the one who does this in her class. And the minute I heard she did that, I was like, oh, I got to do it in my class. The students in my class for EDU have to have an ed plan so that I grade it. It's part of the grades that we have that you have to have in order to pass a class. You have to go see a counselor. I make you go see a counselor. I make you go get an ed plan and I have you sit down with them to talk about your career. The students in the beginning look at me like, professor, like I already met with them 3 years ago. And I look at them and I'm like, yeah, 3 years ago, it's different now. Every week it changes. So you're going to have students who are going to tell you, miss, do I have to? And I always tell them, yes, you have to. It's part of your grade. You're going to have to go see the counselor. What I ended up doing as well is I started partnering with the counselors that didn't know my program, because if a lot of the counselors know my program, more than likely they're going to direct my students to that pathway. There's a lot of times that it's just a disconnect. The counselors don't know every single program because they're so busy. But if I make the time to go just have a conversation with them and say, hey, just checking in with you, let me let you know that we have this program coming up. If you know any student, or can I come and talk to your meetings? I'll come and do a little quick presentation, you know, get everybody at one shot. And so this is what's going to help you, and it's going to help with the program. Am I missing anything else?
Can I pop in for one thing, Yadira?
Sure. Please.
One thing that I found to be incredibly effective, and it took me years to kind of get this, was I had a partnership with the counseling department on my campus that every semester, so both spring and fall, they would give me one counseling meeting where I would have at least like 30 minutes of the agenda. They would often offer the whole agenda, but I always knew they had many different topics. So I would try to keep it condensed, and I would do, here's what's going on, here's the updates with the program, here's the resources and the free professional development that's happening this semester, here's the flyers you can give to your students. And one of the things that I always would do with my counseling partners as well is I would bring in a bag of marketing materials for each one of the counselors. So when I was at Canyons, there was over 20 counselors on staff. So I'd come with 20 teach bags, and I'd have pencils and pens, and here's the flyers, here's the here's all the kind of the supplemental stuff, but here's also the marketing stuff. So the second you have somebody that says, I think I might want to be a teacher, it's like, oh, here's a squishy ball, like the stress balls. Here's the website. You want to contact Renee. And they had something tangible, not just a piece of paper or a reference that they were leaving with, but they suddenly had a product. And it was an identification with the career that they're interested in. And it was like an invitation to take this product and be part of this group. And we found that with counselors, that was incredibly, that one meeting that they devoted each semester ended up being so beneficial for all of us. And so,
and I want to say,
sorry,
Renee, I wanted to say that with that in mind, keep in mind that, you know, our counselors, it's a lot of work. So think about it. It's a lot of work for them to keep up. We have a lot of students that, you know, I don't know how many you guys have, but there's some colleges, I think for us, Bobby, at El Camino, I don't know how many, I know that at Rio Hondo, we have about maybe 8 for all these students. And so when you take that initiative and when you take that, like, hey, here's my program, let me talk about it, to them, they see it like, oh my God, it's a big help, because then I don't have to do that extra work to present it to your students. It's like you're taking that initiative, you're going to do that work, you're going to do that presentation, and they love it. And when the counselors love you, your program succeeds. I've learned that. So thank you, Renee, for sharing that. I know, see, do not invite me to presentations, because I will talk forever. So
I was going to say, in relation to counseling, the counselors at El Camino, we have a lot of counselors.
yeah,
And even though there is a counselor that's dedicated to the division that houses our teacher preparation program, it's still important for the other counselors to know about your program. And so in the past, what we've sometimes done is, they have their own like counselors meeting, it's monthly or whatever it is. And so occasionally we would go and present to all the counselors, because it's sort of a way also to try to reel in those students that are single subject majors, because they're probably not going to your counselor that's dedicated to your program because they're majoring in math or biology or whatever it is they're majoring in. And so they're going to the counselor that's designated for their division. And they don't really know. They know they want to be a teacher, but they don't really know that there's special things that maybe they should be doing, or classes they might pursue to, become a better teacher. So it's sometimes good to present to those overall group counseling meetings so that all the counselors are at least aware of the opportunities available to the students.
One other key too is anytime I would hold professional development conferences, you make sure those counselors have a couple slots and that they're part of the conference and part of the professional development. And then of course, when you do the statewide or like the larger professional development, then you want to invite them not only as presenters, but also to engage in the PD that's being offered for free. So with that, let's go ahead now into budget. We're going to switch real quick for about 15 more minutes.
Yeah. I'm going to pull you away from the touchy-feely and I'm the person that reels them in and say, hey, you need to start spending this money.
Get those emotions under control, right?
Yeah. So my job with this partnership is to, basically, I think sometimes the problem is, because I am a grant writer too, that sometimes the person who's writing the grant, even if you have a team writing the grant, it's not necessarily the same person that gets stuck with managing the project. And maybe the person that's going to suddenly be the project director may not have had any participation in the writing of that proposal. And so they're having to like start from scratch and read this proposal and read over the budget and try to figure out what you meant. So, I do, when I write them, I try to be very clear, but everything in the budget is related to some deliverable in your narrative. So, I recommend you go over the budget and go, with your in comparison to the narrative, and, identify all the deliverables that are outlined. Basically compare the time that was guesstimated in the proposed budget with the reality of how much time you'll actually need to complete the activity, to make sure that you're budgeting for the right number of hours for your faculty or your staff or whoever it is going to be working on different aspects of the project. Because then you may need to tweak the budget a little bit. Unless you're making huge changes, I think it's like over 10%, you don't have to get prior approval from your program monitor at the Department of Ed. You can just move them around, and you probably won't need to tweak it that much, but still, you need to know ahead of time, because in most cases, the federal government, you apply for a grant like in February or March or January. They don't tell you until like August or September, and federal grants start October 1st. So it's like you find out, you have to get the board, the board to approve your project. So you're always starting late. And the one thing the feds don't like is rollover. So you really are trying to spend down your money as much as you can in each year of the project, because even if if you roll over 10% of your project in the first year, then suddenly what happens the second year? You're going to roll over 20% and 30%, you're going to get farther behind. So you really try to spend down as much as you can. So don't be shy about asking for input from others, that maybe either worked on the narrative to get clarification about maybe what they meant, what this deliverable could be, things like that. Sometimes people will sort of pad a budget, if they're not sure how much time, so they'll put a little extra. So that's part of what you had to determine once you start running the program. Because part of it is too, maybe there's a placeholder for a certain activity, and then you find out that actually this is something that your college already provides, and why you might need to supplement it in some way. You don't need to completely support it, because that's actually not allowable for you to supplant funds, for you to suddenly start paying for something that your college already pays for. And that would also create a problem anyway, because what happens at the end of that 5 years? Someone has to pay for it again, so that's part of the reason they don't let you supplant. So you can go to the next slide. So that's part of it, is deliverables, prior time commitments. I know that lots of times when you're writing a proposal, you write in the people that you're familiar with. So you write in your existing faculty or staff. Then when it comes time, like I said, maybe they had different commitments back in January when the proposal was written, and then you get it funded and you're in the fall, and they're teaching more classes than they were before. So you're not actually allowed to pay them for the amount of a special assignment that you anticipated. So they might be overwhelmed, or they may not actually have the time to work on the project. So you have to see first, actually based on time commitments, how much your in-house faculty and staff have to devote to that project. Because even if they're enthusiastic and want to work on it, they may not have the time. Whether they did at one point, they may not have it now. They may have other commitments. So don't be afraid to find external sources. For instance, Renee, there's excellent resources, especially in the teacher education preparation venue. There's some great resources of people out there that can come and help on the project. Because I'm not a teacher. I actually trained to be a teacher, but I'm not a teacher. But I work closely with the statewide teacher preparation program, and I know of a bunch of sources that are great that can help out on the project. Because
and she's certainly teaching me. So you are a teacher.
Well, I teach grant writing.
Yeah.
But
amazing.
Because it's all about building a project team that's going to ensure that you have reportable outcomes, so that you keep your stellar reputation with the federal government. You don't have,
Right.
Black marks against you or whatever. And my last tip on my bullet was actually initially, because of all the changes that may have taken effect between the time the proposal was written and when you're actually putting it into effect, it's good to meet on a weekly basis to get those budget details ironed out, to try to get things spent down. Because as you know, also in our community college system, we have this window of time that before the end of our fiscal year where we can't spend any more money anymore. And we're on hold until the next fiscal year starts. So especially if you've already had a late start, you need to try to get on board quickly, start spending the money, so that because once July starts, September will be here before you know it, and that's the end of your fiscal year. So yeah, I'm the one who reels them in and says, do this.
I was gonna say, bottom line is, get yourself a team like me, Kim, and Renee. We're all emotions and all passion, but then we have Bobby, who's like, all right, enough.
Yeah, that's all fine and great, but I need you to buy this stuff right now.
Honest truth.
Spend the money.
Well,
that's right.
We are stewards of an investment. And
Right.
so everything we do has to have that at the forefront of what we do. You know what I mean? And so, and part of it though is having a team of people, both inner on campus and external, having your stakeholders, having a really solid advisory team. You have to have people you can trust to get the work done.
Right.
So with that, we want to share with you. Oh, I'm sorry, Bobby.
No, I was going to, as to say, with that, I was going to pass it to Renee.
Well, and we want to share with you right now in education, there's so much going on in the virtual space. And so one of the things we wanted to share with you is another project I'm actually working on separately with joint special populations, but Kim thought it would be really valid to share this here as well. And so I appreciate the opportunity, Kim. Joint special populations is a group that many of us are familiar with, and they focus on equity issues. And so they have got some really dynamic conversations and opportunities coming up in spring. They're focusing on the concept of humanizing education and humanizing education in the virtual space. And so on the left-hand side, there's a flyer that has a couple different couch discussions with students coming up. I actually will be involved in the inclusion couch discussion with high school students that's coming up at the end of April. And Yadira is leading the couch discussion with Latinx female community college students. And then on the right-hand side of this slide, we also are going to share with you, or sharing with you, a rollout of a project that JSPAC has been working on since basically the beginning of the pandemic. They're creating a guidebook for how to humanize education in the virtual space. And that guidebook will be rolling out on Monday, May 10th from 4:30 to 6 o'clock. It's a briefing that we'll be giving on the work that's been happening all year. We have a stakeholder group on this concept of humanizing education that is spanning every single education section. And it's also spanning people from industry, parents. You just can't even imagine how diverse the stakeholders are. So we'd like to encourage you to consider joining us at JSPAC and really coming into exploring this concept of how do we humanize what we do even more? Because the more we can humanize it in this virtual space, the more tangible it will be for our students, and we will see an increase in student retention and student success. And so it's been tricky, and a lot of people keep thinking like, well, we just go back to campus. Even when we go back to campus, it's not going to look the same. And I'll give you an example. There's one of our CSUs that was saying how they're going to be open in fall. And then I found the data, or I received the data about a week ago. They have over 3,500 sections, and they're running 400 of them face-to-face. So they're running about 12% face-to-face, but they're advertising it as a face-to-face fall semester. So we really need to make sure that as we're looking at working with students and supporting our students, we're finding as many opportunities as possible to help them be successful in this space. And so this is one example. With that, Kim and Yadira are going to quickly get into a little bit on Brofenbrenner just for a moment, and then we're going to wrap up for today.
Great. Thank you, Renee. So we look at Brofenbrenner's ecological system, right? And we have to narrow ourselves down to the individual, really look at the individual. That starts with our students. We also have to look at the microsystem and the influences. We talked a lot about family. We've talked about the external influences that are very close to our students, making sure that we have a partnership with those individuals. We have a partnership with the culture. We have a partnership with the families and the extended families, the friends, the community. We have a partnership with the community. We need to really understand our community, understand our students, understand the diverse backgrounds that they come from, the experiences, really valuing our students' experiences, whether they have a connection to education or not. The experiences that they have throughout their life inform who they are and who they will become. And we need to know that, we need to value that, as well as the family experiences. Their experiences as a family influence who they are, who they will become. And there is such beautiful value in that. So we have to understand that. Again, looking at Brofenbrenner, the ecological system, how everything around us impacts who we are as an individual. We've really got to take Brofenbrenner to heart and truly understand the impact that each of these systems have all the way out. So take some time, again, to do that intrapersonal reflection. Take some time to study this model and relate it to the students that you're working with, relate it to their experiences, their culture, their backgrounds. Go ahead, Yadira.
I was gonna say, Kim, thank you so much for that. And for those of you who, I'm pretty sure everybody's probably familiar, and if you're not, Brockenburner, it's, he's somebody that we use a lot in our ECE classes, our EDU. I actually firmly believe that anybody who's going to go into teaching or working with people should know Brockenburner, but that is just me. I make sure all my students know about it, but it's so important, like Kim mentioned, that we take into consideration our students and look at them in those lens of who are they really. And a lot of the times our students, those difficult students that we have, because we have them, and I admit it, they're projecting something that's happening and we might not know what it is. It's probably in their home, but if we take the moment and the time to really look at our students, they are just asking for help, or they're, whatever we are doing is not working. And so just if we take that ability to just see them really how they are, you're going to be successful and the program is going to be successful. Anything else, Kim? Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Oh,
I think about too the importance of connecting with students outside of the virtual space, and not even outside of the virtual space, but outside of the classroom space. And one of the things that Yadira specializes in is her accessibility for students. And I think as we're looking at this TAPP project and kind of we're creating the structure using the funding, we're making sure that we're embedding all these best practices from the very moment the students are with us, because we want to be accessible. We want them to feel like they've got a cheerleader and a champion in their side, on their side. And we really want to do whatever is necessary to provide those wraparound services from them from the point of entry to the point of exit. And while encouraging student voice, that's part of the TAPP project that I think that it's going to be unique. Our students are going to help guide us in terms of what they need and what they're looking for. The grant was written in a way where, professional development, some of these concepts are kind of at this broader level. And so we'll be able to ground it with the students and with faculty, making sure it's going the exact direction that's needed for the Antelope Valley community.
And I was, sorry, Renee. No, I was just going to say an important aspect of that is, like you mentioned, the accessibility. For any teacher, I think that we need to be accessible. I feel that,
Yes.
that call of, they do get surprised. I've had students, I call my students, I will be that teacher when they drop my class, and I'm like, hey, I just noticed you dropped my class. What happened? And, they're like, yeah, it's because, and once I realized, like, oh, that was it. Why didn't you just come talk to me? Let's fix it. They get reinstated back.
I put in the chat, which is Maslow before Bloom, which they're theorists within early childhood and within education, but just this concept of basic needs have to be met before we can get into the academics. And in the pandemic, it's exemplified tenfold.
Yeah. And, as an administrator, as a faculty member, as a professor, what it really comes down to is allow your practice to drive your passion. And when you allow your practice to drive your passion, your students learn to allow their practice to drive their passion. So thank you for that, you all.
And I'm going to butt in here because you're out of time.
Okay. Should I wrap
it
up
up
here?
You got a minute.
All right. Conclusion. You want to go back for a minute?
Sure.
We'll send them out. We want to learn from the experts. Reach out, learn from the experts. Don't be afraid to learn what's working. Faculty, it's all about the takeaway is trainings that are applicable, innovative, and current. Access to professional development. We shared the Summer Bridge and the statewide training that we're going to be having, and applicable and tangible strategies for a specified lens of focus Latino students. Thank you so much, you all, for joining us.
And on this last slide, everybody, we've included all of our email addresses, and we would like to invite you to please be in touch with us. We'd love to collaborate. Diane, we will absolutely be collaborating with you, but everybody else who's on, we're here to be a resource. And if we can be a resource in any capacity for anybody who's interested in teacher preparation or wants to partner, please reach out to us. Also, if anybody would like the slide deck, make sure your email is within the chat. And with that, I'm going to close this for today. I'm going to stop share and stop the recording. And anybody who's willing to stay on, I'd love to do a quick group picture. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here today. And we're looking forward to a fantastic CCCAOE. Thanks for starting off your first session with us today.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let me stop recording. And then let's take a quick picture if we can.